Welcome back to the Science and Slumber. This is our quiet harbor in the cosmos, a place to explore the universe's most wondrous stories as we gently drift towards sleep. Tonight, we're going on a slow, soothing journey to our two closest planetary neighbors, Venus and Mars, asking a question that feels both simple and immense. Where does humanity go next? It sounds like a straightforward choice between two worlds, but the deeper you fall into the story, the more it reveals about who we are, what we dream of, and how we imagine our future among the stars. I hope this journey helps you drift off into a peaceful, restorative sleep. Or if your mind prefers to wander, I hope it keeps you pleasantly curious, floating in a state of quiet wonder. If you have a moment before you settle in completely, a gentle tap on the like button, and maybe a quiet click to subscribe, truly helps this sleepy little channel grow and find other curious minds. I often wonder where you are listening from tonight. Are you in a quiet room as the city settles into its late evening hum, or perhaps in the country during the deep, still hours just before the dawn? Wherever you are, I'm glad we can share this quiet time together. So settle in now, get truly comfortable. There's nothing you need to do, nothing to remember. Let the words wash over you, like the slow, solar winds flowing through the quiet dark. Let your thoughts drift and soften. Ready? Here we go. Let's begin with the world we all know so well. The one that has been waiting for us in our dreams for generations. When we close our eyes and imagine humanity's next great step, our minds almost always drift to the same place, a world of red. We see the vast quiet deserts of Mars, stretching out under a pale butterscotch sky. It is a landscape etched into our collective memory, a place made familiar by 1,000 stories, 1,000 photographs beamed back across the emptiness of space. This is the Mars of our imagination, the great silent frontier. Imagine standing in a gallery before a single immense painting. The canvas is filled with a deep, earthy rust color, the shade of ancient oxidized iron. It is a world of sublime, quiet emptiness. You can almost feel the stillness. In this painting you see the grand, sweeping canyons, like Valles Marineris, a scar on the planet's face so vast that if it were on Earth, it would stretch from one coast of America to the other. You see the gentle, sloping sides of Olympus Mons, a volcano so tall its peak rests above the thin wisps of cloud in the atmosphere, a sleeping giant from a long-dead age. The artist, time itself, has used a palette of reds and ochres and soft, dusty browns, creating a world that feels ancient, patient, and profoundly lonely. It is beautiful, in the way a forgotten ruin is beautiful. For decades, we have sent our emissaries there, our quiet, wheeled children. We have given them names of human virtues: spirit, opportunity, curiosity, perseverance. They are our eyes, our hands, our feet in that fine, cinnamon-colored dust. Think of them now, these lonely voyagers, humming softly to themselves in a world where there is no other sound but the whisper of a thin, carbon dioxide wind. Imagine the delicate, intricate tracks their wheels leave in the soil. Those tracks are the first human signature on another world, a message written in the dust that simply says, "We were here, we came to see." There is something so poignant about those lines in the sand, a fragile proof of our longing, drawn across a landscape that has been untouched for billions of years. These little robots, powered by the light of a distant sun, are the living embodiment of our oldest question: are we alone? In other words, Mars has become the landscape of our outward-bound imagination. It's a story we feel we already know the chapters of. We know of the search for ancient water, frozen in the poles and buried beneath the soil. We've heard the gentle, hopeful whispers of finding fossilized life, a sign that the universe is not as empty as it seems. The dream of the first human footsteps on that red ground feels like a promise we have made to ourselves, a destiny we are slowly, patiently moving towards. It is the classic pioneer's dream, a vast open land, seemingly empty and waiting for us to arrive, waiting for us to bring the sounds of life to its profound and ancient silence. What this really means is that Mars feels like a natural inheritance, the next logical step on a journey that began when our ancestors first looked up at the stars. It is the solid ground we see, the firm foundation upon which we can imagine building a new home. The dream is so clear, so powerful, and so deeply ingrained in our culture that it feels like the only dream worth having. We see the red dust, the pale sky, the distant cratered horizons, and we feel a sense of belonging, a sense of future history. But a photograph, no matter how beautiful, leaves something out. A dream, no matter how vivid, cannot tell you what it feels like to truly be there. The picture is missing the gentler, less obvious truths carried on the wind. But let's step quietly into that beautiful silent photograph. Let's imagine what it truly feels like to stand on that rusty ground, beneath that pale, distant sun. The first thing you would notice is not something you see, but something you feel, or rather something you don't. The air. The Martian atmosphere is exquisitely thin, a delicate whisper of a thing. It is less than 1% the density of the air you are breathing right now. Imagine being in a vast and ancient library, a place so old that the air itself has grown tired and sparse. The silence in that room would be profound, because there is simply not enough substance to carry sound in a familiar way. A shout would sound like a muffled cry. The gentle hum of machinery would be swallowed by the quiet. On Mars the wind may blow, but it is a ghost of a wind, with no real strength, no power to push against you. It is a silence that comes not from peace, but from an abiding emptiness. This thin veil of an atmosphere is too fragile to hold on to the sun's warmth. Think of it as a blanket that has been worn down over 1 billion years, until only a single gossamer thread remains. During the day the sunlight touches the ground, and the surface can warm to a temperature that feels almost comfortable, a gentle spring day on Earth. But the moment the sun dips below the horizon, that warmth vanishes. It doesn't fade slowly, it flees, radiating instantly back into the blackness of space. The cold that follows is a deep and penetrating thing, a cold that sinks into the soil, into the rock, into the very bones of the planet. Night temperatures on Mars plummet to depths that make Earth's most frigid polar regions seem mild. It is a cold born of an almost perfect vacuum, an absolute absence of energy. And then there is the challenge that you cannot see or feel at all. It is a constant, silent, invisible rain. On Earth, our thick atmosphere and our magnetic field work together as a beautiful, intricate shield, protecting us from the sun's harshest radiation and the ceaseless shower of cosmic rays from deep space. Mars has no global magnetic field to deflect these particles, and its thin atmosphere offers almost no resistance. So, this invisible rain falls constantly, passing through the soil, through the walls of any habitat, through life itself. These are tiny, energetic particles that can fray the very fabric of living things. To be on the surface of Mars is to be exposed, unprotected, in a way that we on Earth can barely comprehend. In other words, the great, beautiful silence of Mars is the silence of vulnerability. The stillness is a stillness of scarcity, a scarcity of air, of warmth, of protection. The romantic dream of the pioneer building a cabin on a new frontier gives way to a quieter, more careful reality. The first Martians will not be explorers of a vast surface, but miners of a deep refuge. Their homes will almost certainly be underground, buried in ancient lava tubes, or shielded by many feet of red soil, not to hide from any creature, but to hide from the sky itself. What this really means is that the challenge of Mars is one of absence. It is a world that has lost what it might once have had, and to live there is to constantly battle against that profound and pervasive lack. It is a beautiful, majestic, and deeply fragile place, a world that asks for everything and offers very little in return. The challenges of Mars are the challenges of emptiness. But there is another kind of challenge, not of absence, but of an overwhelming presence. And this brings us to the forgotten sister, the world we have long overlooked, veiled in a brilliant, impenetrable light. Now, let us turn our gaze to our other neighbor, the one who glimmers in our twilight sky with such serene and steady brilliance. For millennia, we have called her the morning star, the evening star. From this great distance, Venus is a perfect luminous pearl, a soft white jewel wrapped in a seamless cloak of clouds. For so long we imagined that beneath that gentle shining veil there must lie a world like our own, perhaps a younger, warmer Earth, a humid paradise of vast oceans and lush tropical jungles. It was a beautiful dream, born of a beautiful light in our sky. Imagine discovering, deep in an old forgotten garden, a magnificent greenhouse. It is a Victorian masterpiece of glass and iron, its panes catching the sunlight in a dazzling, inviting way. From the outside, you see only the soft, white, misty condensation on the inside of the glass, and through it, the vague, green shapes of what must be an explosion of life. It seems to promise a world of warmth, of moisture, of Eden. This was our early dream of Venus. We saw the beautiful exterior and imagined a paradise within. But as we got closer, as we built the first machines to peer through the glass, the reality was something else entirely. The first probes we sent, the brave little emissaries from the Soviet Venera program in the 1970s, were like tiny armored messengers sent to unbolt the door to that greenhouse. What they found inside was not a paradise, but a furnace. For a few precious, fleeting moments before they were silenced forever, they sent back a portrait of a world that defied all imagination. Imagine pressing your face to the glass of that greenhouse now. The air inside is not just humid, it is thick, syrupy, and suffocatingly hot. The light that filters through is a strange, oppressive sulfur yellow. The pressure of that air is so immense that it would feel less like a gas and more like being 1,000 meters deep in one of Earth's oceans. It is a pressure that crushes steel. The temperature is hot enough to melt lead, and the clouds that look so soft and white from afar are not made of gentle water vapor, but of corrosive sulfuric acid. Those little probes, in their final defiant broadcasts, painted a picture of a world that had become a cautionary tale. They showed us a surface of cracked volcanic rock, glowing a dull, angry red under a sky the color of poison. There was no water, no life, no gentle jungle. There was only pressure, heat, and a profound, overwhelming sense of hostility. In other words, our perception of Venus shifted from a dream of a sister world to the reality of a paradise lost. It was not a place of gentle beginnings, but a vision of a terrible end, a world that had fallen victim to a runaway greenhouse effect, a climate that had spun out of control and could never return. What this really means is that Venus became, in our minds, the impossible planet. Mars was difficult, but it was a challenge we could comprehend, a challenge of engineering, of providing what was absent. Venus felt different. It felt like a fundamental barrier. Its dangers were not born of emptiness, but of a terrible, suffocating abundance. The planet was crossed off the list, relegated to the realm of scientific curiosity, a place to study from a safe distance, but never, ever a place to go. It was the beautiful star with a heart of fire, a warning hanging in our sky. This profound difference between the world with too little and the world with too much is a tale told entirely in their skies. One world wears a whisper of air, the other is drowned in a deep and heavy ocean of it. Let's hold this image for a moment. Two worlds defined by their skies. Imagine, if you will, a great sleeping figure, a form carved from red stone lying in the open dark of space. Its name is Mars. Draped across its silent form is a covering, but you can hardly call it a blanket. It is more like a single, impossibly fine piece of silk, a delicate, rust-colored veil. It is so thin that you can see every detail of the stone body beneath it, every crater, every canyon, every ancient, dried-up riverbed. This silk scarf does not hold warmth. The faintest heat from a distant star touches it and passes right through, vanishing into the cold. It offers no real protection. The harsh light of the cosmos, the unending rain of tiny sharp particles, pierces it as if it were not there at all. It is a beautiful, but tragically insufficient covering. It is an atmosphere of near absence. Now, turn to the other sleeping figure, the sister. Her name is Venus. She too is covered, but her blanket is the opposite in every conceivable way. It is a colossal quilt, a covering of immeasurable weight and thickness, woven not from silk, but from a dense, heavy gas, layered 1,000 times over. It is so thick that it completely hides the form beneath. You cannot see her face, her mountains, or her valleys. You can only see the soft golden white sheen of the quilt itself. This blanket is an almost perfect insulator. It traps every bit of warmth the planet produces, holding it so tightly that the world beneath glows with a feverish heat. It is an absolute and impenetrable shield against the radiation of space, but it is also a prison. Its weight is immense, a crushing presence that defines everything about the world it hides. This is an atmosphere of overwhelming abundance. In other words, the two atmospheres represent two different kinds of extremes. The sky of Mars is a delicate memory of what an atmosphere could be, a ghost that offers all the beauty of a sunset, but none of the life-giving substance of a true sky. The sky of Venus is a fortress, a beautiful, swirling and suffocating barrier that holds a world captive. One is a whisper, the other is a roar that has been compressed into a crushing silence. One is defined by what it lacks, the other by what it has in suffocating excess. What this really means is that our relationship with each world is defined by this single profound difference. To imagine living on Mars is to imagine a life of constant, careful construction, of building shelters and walls and shields to create a tiny bubble of atmosphere where there is almost none. We must bring the blanket with us. But to imagine living on Venus has always seemed impossible, because how can you build a shelter against the shelter itself? How can you survive a blanket that is 1,000 times too thick? The problem seems absolute, a fundamental dead end. We have judged these two worlds entirely by their coverings, by the air that surrounds them. But in doing so, we have overlooked a deeper, more fundamental truth, a quiet clue that is not written in the sky, but is whispered by the very heart of each world. Beneath those two vastly different skies, from the whisper-thin veil of Mars to the crushing velvet of Venus, lies a more intimate force. It is the silent, invisible pull that each world exerts upon you. It is the feeling of weight, the planet's own embrace. It is gravity. And in the language of gravity, these two worlds tell a surprisingly different story. Let's imagine for a moment that you are standing on the red soil of Mars. As you take your first step, you feel a startling lightness, an effortless buoyancy. Your body, so accustomed to the steady pull of Earth, suddenly feels untethered. You are in a place where you weigh less than half of what you have always known. It would feel like living your entire life in a slow-motion dream of leaping. A gentle push would send you gliding through the air. You could lift heavy objects with an ease that feels magical. But this magic has a quiet cost. Your body, your bones and muscles were forged in a stronger river of gravity. In this shallow Martian stream, they would have nothing to push against. Over time, without the constant, reassuring resistance of a world like our own, your very structure would begin to forget its strength. Your bones would thin, your muscles would soften. It is a gentle but profound disconnect, a constant, physical reminder that you are a visitor here, that your body was made for a world that holds you more tightly. Now, let's imagine the opposite. Let's imagine you could somehow stand on the surface of Venus. You would be instantly silenced by the heat and the pressure, of course, but for a single, fleeting moment before that, you would feel something astonishingly familiar. You would feel the ground beneath your feet with a firmness that is an uncanny echo of home. Venus's gravity is 90% that of Earth's. The difference is so slight, you might not even notice it. Your body would understand this place. The weight of your arms, the effort of taking a step, the simple act of standing upright, it would all feel right. It would be a deep and immediate sense of physical belonging. In the language of gravity, Venus speaks to our bodies in a dialect we perfectly understand. It is a quiet, reassuring pressure that says, "Your strength is welcome here. You were built for a world just like this." In other words, while Mars offers a seductive, dreamlike freedom from our own weight, it is the freedom of a ghost, a slow unmooring from our physical selves. Venus, beneath its hostile exterior, offers a profound and comforting familiarity, a gravity that feels like a homecoming for our very bones. It is a constant, steadying presence, a force that knows us and is known by us in return. What this really means is that we have been so mesmerized by the surfaces of these worlds, so focused on the conditions we can see and measure, that we have missed this deeper, more fundamental truth. Mars looks more like a home, but it feels deeply alien to the human body. Venus looks like the most alien place imaginable, but in this one crucial, silent way, it feels like Earth. And this is the gentle clue, the quietest of hints, that we may have been looking in the wrong place entirely. We've been trying to find a home on the ground, but the map bends in a way we don't expect. For so long, our journey to Venus has ended at its surface. We have sent our probes on a one-way trip down into the depths, and in our minds, we have followed them, crashing against the impossible wall of heat and pressure. We have looked at the ground and found only a dead end, but this is the moment where the map bends. This is where we learn to read it in a new way. The destination we have been looking for is not at the bottom, but in the middle. Imagine the deepest part of Earth's ocean, the Mariana Trench. It is a place of absolute darkness and unimaginable pressure, a realm so hostile that life exists only in the most resilient and alien of forms. If you were to design a vehicle to explore it, it would need to be a fortress of titanium, a tiny armored sphere built to withstand a weight that would pulverize anything less. To try and build a city there would be an act of utter folly. We look at the bottom of our own ocean and we understand, instinctively, that this is not a place for us. Now think of the surface of Venus as the floor of an even deeper, hotter and more crushing ocean. An ocean made not of water but of air. For decades we have been staring at the very bottom of that atmospheric sea and concluding that the entire ocean is uninhabitable. But our relationship with Earth's oceans is not defined by its most extreme depths. We do not judge the entire Pacific by the conditions in the Mariana Trench. Instead, we have learned to live in harmony with its surface and its shallows. We build boats to sail upon its waves. We find warmth and light and an abundance of life in the upper layers where the sun can reach. We have always understood that the secret to the ocean is not to conquer its depths, but to find the gentle place where we belong. What if we have been making this same simple mistake with Venus? What if instead of trying to fight our way down to the bottom, we simply stop? We lift our gaze from the scorched, cracked plains of the surface. We let go of the idea of solid ground as the only place to build a home. We begin a new kind of journey, not down, but up. We ascend from the crushing depths of this atmospheric ocean, rising through the thick, syrupy layers of carbon dioxide. As we climb higher and higher, a quiet miracle begins to happen. With every kilometer we rise, the immense pressure begins to lessen. The suffocating heat begins to fade. The thick orange gloom begins to thin, brightening to a soft golden light. We are rising towards the surface of this great planetary sea of air. In other words, we have been trying to solve the wrong problem. The question was never, how do we survive the hellish surface of Venus? The quieter, more elegant question has always been, where in this vast and complex world does a sanctuary for us already exist? It is a shift from confrontation to observation, from trying to tame a world to finding a gentle place within it. What this really means is that we are letting go of the old familiar dream of conquest, of planting a flag in the soil. We are instead embracing a different kind of story, a more graceful and adaptable one. We are looking at Venus not as a solid ball of rock to be tamed, but as a layered fluid system, a place of immense depth and complexity. And somewhere in that complexity, there is a quiet, hidden haven. For there is a specific serene altitude high in that ocean of air where the crushing weight lifts and the burning heat fades. The answer begins at a calmer, deeper level we haven't reached yet. We continue our ascent, rising through the thick, heavy ocean of Venus's air. The journey upwards is a process of gentle release. Imagine being a deep-sea diver, slowly, carefully returning to the surface. For a long time you have been in a world of immense pressure and deep orange twilight. But now, as you rise, you can feel the crushing weight on your body begin to lighten. The water around you grows brighter, the oppressive gloom giving way to a soft, hopeful light filtering down from above. You are leaving the hostile depths and entering the shallows, the sunlit zone where life can thrive. This is our journey through the Venusian sky. And then, at a very specific altitude, around 50 kilometers or 31 miles above the forgotten surface, we arrive. We reach a place of exquisite and unexpected equilibrium. The pressure of the deep has vanished, replaced by a gentle, familiar embrace. The intense heat has dissipated, softened into a comfortable, life-sustaining warmth. We have reached the surface of the great Venusian sky sea. We have found a calm harbor in the middle of a storm. Here, in this serene layer of the atmosphere, the conditions are so familiar they are almost unbelievable. The atmospheric pressure surrounding you is 1 Earth bar, the same pressure you would feel on a beach at sea level on a perfect day. It is a pressure our bodies are designed for, a pressure that feels like nothing at all, which is to say it feels like home. And the temperature here is not the lead-melting furnace of the surface, nor the bitter cold of the upper atmosphere. It hovers in a gentle, habitable range, from a mild coolness to a comfortable tropical warmth. It is a place where liquid water would not instantly boil away. It is a place where a human could, in theory, exist without a heavy, pressurized suit. Let's linger in this place for a moment. Picture yourself here. There is no ground beneath you, only an endless, magnificent vista of clouds, a soft, billowing floor stretching out to a horizon you can never reach. Below this floor of clouds lies the hostile world, but it is a world away, a deep and forgotten abyss. Above you, another layer of paler, thinner clouds forms a ceiling, a soft, misty roof to this hidden kingdom. And all around you, the light is a constant, diffuse, golden-white glow. The sun is not a sharp disk in the sky. It is a bright presence, a warmth that is everywhere at once, filtered through the gentle haze. It is a world of eternal, soft daylight. In other words, we have found a perfect habitable slice of our own world, floating in the sky of another. We have discovered a secret garden, not on the ground, but suspended between the crushing depths and the cold emptiness of space. It is a place that solves the two great problems of Venus at once. The pressure is right, and the temperature is right. The very atmosphere that is so deadly on the surface becomes, at this specific altitude, our greatest ally. What this really means is that the most Earth-like environment in our solar system, outside of Earth itself, is not the dusty, irradiated and frozen surface of Mars. It is here, in this calm, gentle and forgotten layer of the Venusian sky. We have been searching for a new home, and we have found it, not as a solid shore, but as a calm, endless ocean of air. We have found a calm sea in the middle of the sky, and this leads us to a calmer, deeper question. What kind of vessel could possibly sail here? Having found this calm, habitable sea in the Venusian sky, we must now imagine the vessel that could sail upon it. The mind immediately goes to our old stories of exploration. Heavy, powerful machines, fortresses built to withstand the elements. But the beauty of this place is that it does not ask for a fortress. It asks for a ship. It asks for something graceful, something that understands the medium it moves through. So, let us begin to paint the picture of our new home. It is not a dusty outpost dug into the ground, but a buoyant, magnificent habitat floating in the clouds. Imagine a city that is also a great, slow-moving airship. Its structure is not one of heavy, brutalist concrete, but of lightweight, intelligent design. It might be a collection of vast, interconnected spheres, like a string of luminous pearls drifting on the slow, continent-spanning winds. Or perhaps it is a single, immense flying wing, miles across, its upper surface a park bathed in the soft, filtered sunlight, its underside a marvel of engineering. The materials are not heavy metals, but advanced polymers and carbon composites, materials that are both incredibly strong and impossibly light. Picture yourself standing inside, at a window that is not a small, thick porthole, but a vast, floor-to-ceiling expanse of transparent material, stronger than steel. Through it, you see the most breathtaking view in the solar system. Below you is the endless, rolling, golden-white ocean of the cloud tops. It is a dynamic landscape, a slow-motion ballet of soft peaks and gentle valleys, stretching out to a soft, hazy horizon. There is no sense of vertigo, no feeling of falling. There is only a profound sense of peace, of being held securely in the sky. The city does not shudder or rock. It drifts with a silent, steady grace, carried on currents as wide as Earth's oceans. It is a home built not to resist the world, but to join its gentle atmospheric dance. In other words, this is not a colony in the traditional sense. It is a sanctuary. It is a place of light, of openness, of vast and breathtaking views. Compare this to the likely reality of a Martian home, a life lived mostly underground in lava tubes or heavily shielded bunkers, with only brief, carefully planned excursions onto a hostile surface. On Mars, the sky is the enemy, a source of radiation to be hidden from. Here, in our cloud-top city, the sky is our home. It is our foundation, our shield, and our entire world. It is the difference between living in a deep, dark cellar and living in a penthouse with a view of the entire world. What this really means is that we are choosing a different philosophy of living in space. Instead of fighting against an environment of scarcity, we are embracing one of abundance and learning to live within it gracefully. We are not invaders of this world. We are its newest inhabitants, its first sailors on a great golden sea of air. The human spirit, which has always found ways to build homes in the most challenging environments on Earth, from the frozen Arctic to the open ocean, is now learning to build a home in the sky. The engineers and visionaries who dreamt of this place did not see a problem to be solved with brute force, but a riddle to be answered with elegance. But how does such a colossal structure remain afloat, sailing so gracefully on this sea of clouds? The secret is not in some powerful humming engine, but in a quiet, beautiful piece of physics. The next clue sits in the very air filling the rooms where we would live and sleep. You might imagine that a city floating in the sky would need vast, powerful engines, constantly burning fuel, constantly humming and vibrating to keep it from falling into the crushing depths below. You might picture a constant heroic struggle against gravity, but the secret to our cloud-top sanctuary is quieter and far more elegant. It requires no engines, no fuel, no effort at all. It floats for a reason that is so simple, it is almost poetic. To understand it, let's go back to the image of a great ship on one of Earth's oceans. Picture a colossal ocean liner, a vessel of steel weighing hundreds of thousands of tons. It rests upon the water with a steady, reassuring grace. It does not sink because of a simple principle. Its immense, hollow hull displaces a volume of water that is heavier than the ship itself. The ocean, in its immense power, simply lifts the vessel up. The secret to the ship's buoyancy is not the strength of its steel, but the emptiness inside it. It floats because it is a bubble of air, wrapped in a metal shell. Our floating city in the clouds of Venus is exactly like this vessel. The dense, thick atmosphere of carbon dioxide is our new ocean. It is a fluid with weight and presence, just like water. Our city, with its lightweight but incredibly strong shell, is the hull of our new ship. So, what is the emptiness inside our hull that allows it to float? What is the precious lightweight substance that makes us buoyant in this sea of carbon dioxide? It is simply air, the same humble mixture of nitrogen and oxygen that you are breathing now, in this very moment. That air, which feels like nothing to us, which is the very medium of our existence, is significantly lighter and less dense than the thick, heavy atmosphere of Venus. On Earth, we fill balloons with helium to make them rise. Helium is a lifting gas because it is lighter than our nitrogen-oxygen air. In the sky of Venus, our own air becomes the lifting gas. A bubble of Earth air, sealed inside a habitat, would rise through the Venusian atmosphere and float, just like a helium balloon in our own sky. In other words, the very act of creating a habitable space for ourselves, filling a structure with the air we need to breathe, to live, to dream, is the very thing that makes our city fly. Our life support system is also our buoyancy system. There is no separation between the two. The city is held aloft by the very breath of its inhabitants. One can imagine the quiet, profound sense of awe that the first person to realize this must have felt. A realization not of complex engineering, but of a simple, beautiful, and fortunate piece of cosmic physics. It's a solution that requires no force, only an understanding of the world around us. What this really means is that our home in the clouds possesses an inherent and beautiful grace. It is not like a helicopter which must constantly fight against gravity with roaring blades. It is like a boat which simply rests on the water, at peace with its surroundings. Our city does not need to be powered to stay aloft. It is naturally, peacefully, and permanently buoyant. It floats by its very nature. It rests upon the thick golden air, as if it were a solid foundation. We are secure, held aloft not by roaring engines, but by the very breath in our lungs. We are safe, and we are stable in our ocean of air. But the light that fills our rooms, the soft glow that illuminates our world, carries a message that is different from anything we have ever known on Earth. Now, let us settle into the quiet rhythm of a day in this city in the clouds. Let us imagine the quality of the light, the very first thing we would notice upon waking. On Earth, our days are defined by a sharp and beautiful drama. The sun rises, a brilliant blazing disk, painting the horizon in a riot of color. It climbs through the sky, a single directional point of light, casting sharp, clear shadows on the ground. And then it sets, another spectacle of fire and farewell, before plunging us into the deep, cool dark of night. Our lives are unconsciously choreographed to this daily cycle of bright and dark, of presence and absence. But here, 50 kilometers high in the Venusian sky, this drama does not exist. The sun, our familiar fiery star, is never a sharp disk. It is forever hidden, veiled by the translucent layers of cloud above, but its presence is always felt. Imagine living inside a perfectly frosted lantern. The light doesn't come from a single point. It comes from everywhere at once. The entire sky is the source of light. It is a perpetual, diffuse and gentle glow, a soft silver-gold luminescence that infuses everything. There are no harsh shadows here. There is no direct blinding glare. It is a world of soft edges, of gentle illumination, a photographer's dream of perfect, ever-present light. A day is not marked by a sunrise, but perhaps by a slow, subtle brightening of this ambient glow as the sun passes its zenith far above the clouds. A night is not a descent into darkness, but a gentle, slow fading of the light to a soft, silvery twilight that never fully gives way to blackness. The thick atmosphere is a master of scattering light, holding onto the sun's energy long after the planet has turned away from it. The nights would be like a permanent, gentle dusk, a world bathed in a soft, ethereal afterglow. It is a place without the sharp punctuation of sunrise and sunset, but a slow, rhythmic, and unending pulse of light, like the gentle breathing of the sky itself. In other words, to live here is to experience time in a new way. Our internal clocks, so finely tuned to Earth's sharp transitions from day to night, would need to find a new rhythm. We would live in a world of subtle shifts, of gentle gradations of light. It would be a profound psychological shift, a letting go of the familiar, dramatic cycle that has governed all of life on our home world. This is a world without sudden endings or beginnings, a place of serene and constant illumination. What this really means is that our sensory experience of the universe would be transformed. We would be sailors on an ocean of light, where the concept of a clear, starry night is a distant memory, a story told in books. The cosmos would not be a collection of sharp, glittering points in a black void, but a vast, luminous presence that is always with us. It would be a life lived in a permanent state of gentle, meditative brightness, a world where the darkness never fully arrives. There's something quietly poetic about this idea, a home where the light is so patient that it never truly leaves you. This soft, permanent glow is a constant, gentle companion, but the sky that provides it is more than just a source of light. It is also a guardian, for the same thick blanket of air that hides the sun also hides us from the harshness of space. In our gently lit home in the clouds, we find a sense of peace, a feeling of serene isolation from the harsh realities of the cosmos. That peace is not just a feeling, it is a physical reality, born from the very nature of the sky we inhabit. The same immense ocean of air that holds us aloft, that filters the sunlight into a soft perpetual glow, also serves as a profound and tireless guardian. It is a shield, more powerful and more complete than any we could ever hope to build ourselves. Let's return for a moment to the image of Mars, our silent red neighbor. We imagined the constant invisible rain of radiation falling upon its surface, a ceaseless shower of high-energy particles from the sun and from the distant violent fireworks of the galaxy. On Mars, this radiation is a constant ambient threat, a danger that dictates the entire architecture of a colony, forcing it underground, away from the sky. The thin, wispy Martian atmosphere offers about as much protection as holding a single sheet of paper over your head in a downpour. You are, for all intents and purposes, completely exposed. Now, let us return to our floating city, 31 miles high in the Venusian sky. Above our heads, there are still many miles of atmosphere stretching up to the vacuum of space. That thick, dense blanket of gas is our shield. When a solar flare erupts, sending a wave of energetic particles across the solar system, it washes against the upper atmosphere of Venus and is absorbed. When a cosmic ray, a tiny atomic bullet that has traveled across the galaxy for millions of years, arrives at Venus, it collides with the dense wall of air, and its energy is scattered, dissipated, and rendered harmless long before it can reach our home in the clouds. Think of it as the difference between standing on an open plain during a hailstorm and being tucked safely inside a deep, quiet forest. On the plain, you are vulnerable to every strike, but in the forest, the thick canopy of leaves and branches above you catches the hail, breaking its force, until what reaches the forest floor is nothing more than a gentle patter. The Venusian atmosphere is our forest canopy, a living, dynamic shield that quietly and effortlessly absorbs the fury of space. In fact, the protection offered by the air above our floating cities is roughly equivalent to the protection offered by Earth's own atmosphere at sea level. We would be as safe from cosmic radiation in our cloud-top sanctuary as we are walking through a park on a sunny afternoon here at home. In other words, the very thing that makes the surface of Venus so hostile, its thick, suffocating atmosphere, becomes our greatest protector when we learn to live within it. The planet itself in its immense atmospheric abundance is our shield. We do not need to build heavy walls of lead or bury ourselves under tons of rock. We simply need to float in the right place, and the planet takes care of the rest. What this really means is that a life lived in the clouds of Venus would be a life of profound and genuine safety. It would be a life of openness, of large windows and sunlit parks, a life lived with the sky, not in fear of it, We would be free from the constant, invisible threat that hangs over a Martian colony. There is a quiet elegance to this solution. It is a safety that is not built but discovered. It is the peace of finding your place in a system that is already perfectly designed to protect you. The planet shields us from the dangers of the cosmos, but inside this protected kingdom of the sky, there is a different kind of dynamic, a meteorology all its own. The weather here is not of rain and snow, but of something far more alien. Safely enclosed within this atmospheric shield, we float in a kingdom of eternal, soft light. But this kingdom is not a static place. It is a world in constant, gentle motion, with a meteorology all its own. The weather here is not a story of chaotic storms and sudden changes, but the tale of a single, majestic, planet-spanning river of air. Imagine our city as not an airship, but a great, silent sailing vessel on a vast and steady sea. The most powerful feature of Venus is that its entire atmosphere rotates, lapping the planet in a colossal current that takes just 4 Earth days to make a full circuit. But to be inside this current is not to be battered by a storm, because our city and the very air it floats in are all moving together. The feeling is one of profound and steady motion. The wind you would feel on an open balcony would be a gentle 10-mile-an-hour breeze, a soft and constant whisper. It is the river moving, not the wind blowing. You are simply being carried, silently and smoothly, on a current as wide as the world. There is no thunder here. There is no lightning in this calm, stable layer of the sky. The drama of Earth's weather, the towering thunderheads, the flash of light, the deep rumble of a storm, is born from the rapid, violent mixing of hot and cold, wet and dry air. Here, the atmosphere is remarkably uniform, a single homogeneous ocean of gas. The weather is not an event, it is a constant ambient state of being. The sky does not produce storms. The sky asterisk is asterisk the weather. What then of rain? From your vantage point, you would sometimes see below you, in the deeper layers of the clouds, a beautiful ghostly phenomenon. Mists of a soft golden hue would begin to condense, forming delicate shimmering trails that reach downwards towards the abyss. It is a kind of rain, but a rain that never lands. These fine droplets of sulfuric acid, for that is what they are, fall from the cooler upper layers and descend into the hotter, denser air below, where they simply evaporate, turning back into a gas, only to rise again. It is an eternal cycle of condensation and evaporation, a planet breathing a slow, hazy breath, a rain that is forever falling but never reaches a ground. In other words, the meteorology of our cloud kingdom is a single, unified and gentle system. It is a world of constant, predictable motion, of soft breezes and ethereal phantom rain. It is a symphony played on a single, majestic string, a slow, resonant hum that fills the entire world. There are no sudden shifts, no unexpected furies. The weather is as reliable and as peaceful as the soft light that fills the sky. What this really means is that our relationship with the world around us would be one of deep harmony and predictability. On Earth, we are often at the mercy of our planet's chaotic and beautiful weather systems. Here, we would be participants in a single, graceful dance. We would know the currents. We would understand the slow, majestic rhythm of the planet. We would not need to shelter from the weather, because we would be a part of it, carried along in its gentle, unending flow. This world is a serene, predictable, and safe haven. But that soft golden haze, that beautiful phantom rain, has a name that sounds harsh to our ears. The light carries one more message about the nature of this place. That beautiful phantom rain, the soft golden haze that fills our world with its gentle light, does indeed have a name that sounds harsh to our ears. It is a fine diffuse mist of sulfuric acid. In our stories on Earth, this is a substance of danger, a symbol of industrial poison and chemical burns. The name itself creates a feeling of sharp, immediate threat, and for decades this was one of the great emotional barriers to imagining a home on Venus. It felt like trying to build a house in a cloud of poison. But here too, we must learn to see the world not through the lens of our old fears, but with the quiet calm of a new understanding. Let us return to the analogy of the ocean. Imagine you are a shipbuilder, standing on a shore, looking out at the vast blue expanse of the sea. You know that this water is salty. You know that if you were to build a ship of simple, untreated iron, the salt would relentlessly attack it, eating it away, turning its strength to a fragile orange rust. The sea is, in its own way, a corrosive environment. But does this mean the ocean is an impossible place? Do we look upon the sea and declare it uninhabitable because of the salt in its water? Of course not. Instead, we see it as a fundamental property of the environment, a known challenge for which we have developed elegant solutions. We have learned to work with the salt. We have developed paints and coatings that shield the metal from the water. We have discovered alloys, like stainless steel, that are naturally resistant to the salt's corrosive touch. We build our modern ships from fiberglass and advanced composites that are completely indifferent to the salt. We do not see the salt as an enemy to be defeated, but as a rule of the ocean that we must respect. We have learned to be sailors on a salty sea, and we have thrived. The sulfuric acid in the clouds of Venus is the salt in our new golden ocean. It is not a raging, violent threat, but a persistent, ambient quality of the air. The concentration is that of a fine haze, not a pouring rain. And just as we built our ships to withstand the salt, we would build our cloud-top cities to be indifferent to the acid. The materials we would use, fluoropolymers like Teflon, advanced ceramics, carbon fiber composites, even certain noble metals like gold or platinum, are entirely immune to the corrosive effects of sulfuric acid. They would not rust, they would not dissolve, they would simply exist, untouched by the air around them. Our windows, our hulls, the surfaces of our open-air parks would be built of these resilient materials, and the acid haze would be no more a threat to them than the salty sea spray is to a modern yacht. In other words, the challenge of the acid is not a biological one, but a material one. It is an engineering problem, and one for which we already have the answers. We would not be living in the acid, we would be living in a home that is perfectly designed for its environment. It is a quiet, thoughtful solution, one born of chemistry and ingenuity, not of fear. What this really means is that we are learning to see Venus on its own terms. We are letting go of our earthbound prejudices and looking at the world as it truly is, a complex, beautiful and rule-based system. The presence of sulfuric acid is not a flaw or a danger. It is simply one of the rules of this particular sky, and by understanding and respecting that rule, we find that it is no barrier at all. However, this same atmospheric ocean holds the ingredients we need to thrive. We simply need to learn how to cast our nets into its deeper currents. Our city floats, a self-sufficient island in a golden sea of air. But even an island needs resources. For a civilization to grow, to build, to repair itself, it must have access to the raw materials of creation. In our cloud-top sanctuary, we are suspended far above the solid ground, far from the mines and quarries we have always known. So where do we find the metal for our structures, the carbon for our materials, the nitrogen for our farms? The answer, once again, is not to fight the environment, but to work with it in a new and elegant way. Imagine our city as a great, stable platform floating on the surface of a deep and mysterious ocean. We, the inhabitants, live in the sunlit zone, in comfort and safety. But we know that the deep waters below, dark and under immense pressure, are rich with the minerals and nutrients we need. We would not send human divers down into that hostile abyss. Instead, we would become masters of a new kind of fishing. We would sit on our calm, sunny platform and lower incredibly long, impossibly strong lines into the depths. At the end of these lines are not hooks, but sophisticated robotic avatars, our proxies in the deep. This is how our Venusian city provides for itself. From the underside of our floating home, great tethers unspool, descending into the thicker, hotter and darker layers of the atmosphere below. These are not heavy, clumsy steel cables. They are marvels of material science, woven from carbon nanotubes or crystalline polymers, thinner than a spider's silk, but with a tensile strength that dwarfs steel. They are our fishing lines, reaching down from our world into the one below. At the end of each tether is a specialized drone, a robotic gatherer, built to withstand the heat and pressure of the deep atmosphere. They are our hands and eyes in the abyss. We watch from our calm control rooms, in perfect comfort, as these avatars descend. They glide silently through the thick orange gloom, their sensors tasting the air. Their mission is to harvest. The atmosphere of Venus is over 96% carbon dioxide, an almost unlimited source of carbon and oxygen, the fundamental building blocks of organic chemistry, of plastics, of breathable air itself. The robots would filter these gases, compressing them, sending them up the tether. They would harvest the abundant nitrogen, the key to agriculture. They might even find ways to gather trace metals that exist as vapors in the superheated lower atmosphere. And some tethers might go further still, reaching all the way to the forgotten surface, where robotic crawlers could mine the ancient volcanic rocks for iron, silicon, and a dozen other minerals, processing them on site and sending the refined materials on the long journey up to the sky. In other words, our city is not just a home, it is a gentle, automated factory. It is a platform for a new kind of industry, one that is quiet, clean, and continuous. We are not drilling or blasting or strip mining. We are sipping from the atmosphere, patiently drawing up the ingredients we need from the immense, rich reservoir that flows endlessly beneath us. There is no smoke, no pollution, only a silent, graceful, and continuous harvest. What this really means is that our civilization is not built asterisk on asterisk, the planet's resources, but asterisk within asterisk them. On Earth, we must dig into the crust to find what we need. On Mars, those resources are frozen, buried, and scarce. Here on Venus, everything we need to build a thriving technological society is literally in the air around us. We are not invaders taking from a world, we are inhabitants learning to use the properties of our world in a sustainable and intelligent way. This vision of an airy, open, and technologically graceful existence is a powerful one. But the story of our choice isn't complete without returning to the alternative. The Martian counterpoint is a quieter story, one that lives in the dust and the dark. Let us drift back for a moment, leaving the golden clouds and the gentle, constant light behind. Let our minds travel once more across the quiet, cold expanse of space, back to that world of red rock and pale, thin skies. We have imagined a future of airy, open grace in the clouds of Venus, a life lived in harmony with the sky. Now, to truly understand the choice before us, we must place this vision alongside the quiet, terrestrial reality of a life on Mars. The dream of Mars, as we have seen, is a dream of the ground, of solid footing on a new frontier. But the reality of this dream is shaped by the planet's profound vulnerability. To live on Mars is to live in a constant, quiet retreat from the universe. The first Martian city will not be a collection of shining domes on the surface, open to the butterscotch sky. It will, almost certainly, be a city of the deep. It will be a community that has turned inward, burrowing into the planet's crust for safety. The most likely home for the first Martians is inside the ancient, hollowed-out channels of long-dead volcanoes, the lava tubes that form a network of natural caves just beneath the surface. Imagine this life. Your home is a sealed, comfortable habitat built inside one of these vast, silent caverns. The walls are the dark, raw rock of the planet itself. The only light is artificial, carefully designed to mimic the sun's distant rays, to hold back the psychological weight of the perpetual dark. The windows in your home would not look out upon a real landscape, but would likely be high-definition screens, showing a live feed of the beautiful empty world outside. It would be a perfect, but untouchable vista. To step outside would not be a casual act, but a deliberate, careful procedure, donning a heavy, complex suit to protect you not only from the cold and the near vacuum, but from the invisible rain of radiation that the sky fails to stop. And then there is the dust. The fine, rust-colored dust of Mars is not like the soft, organic dust of Earth. It is a dry, sharp, and abrasive powder of crushed rock, finer than flour. And because of the dry, thin atmosphere, it is charged with static electricity. It clings to everything. It is the great, quiet antagonist of the Martian story. It will coat the solar panels, demanding constant robotic cleaning. It will work its way into the fine-toothed gears of machinery. It will follow the astronauts inside, a fine red film that must be meticulously scrubbed from every surface, from every suit and seal, lest its sharp edges damage a critical component, or over years, the soft tissues of the lungs. The daily rhythm of life on Mars would be, in many ways, a slow, patient, and unending war against the dust. In other words, a life on Mars is a life of meticulous engineering and constant, careful defense. It is a life of enclosures, of airlocks, of seals and filters. The planet itself, the very ground you live in, is your primary shield, and the beautiful alien world on the surface is a place you visit, a place you look at through a thick pane of glass, but not a place you can ever truly live in. It is a testament to human resilience, but it is the resilience of a deep-sea creature living in a bathysphere, surviving under immense, constant pressure from the outside. What this really means is that the Martian dream is one of heroic, subterranean endurance. It is the story of humanity as a seed, burying itself in a cold, dry soil, waiting for a planetary spring that may take millennia to arrive. The spirit of the pioneer is there, but it is expressed not in open exploration, but in the careful, constant tending of a fragile garden in a deep and quiet cave. The choice then seems to be between a life lived in the open sky and a life lived deep under the soil, but Venus holds a quieter, deeper secret that we have yet to explore. The paradox begins with the water that is no longer there. Our cloud-top city is a haven of gentle physics, a place of safety and light, but the world it floats within is defined by a profound and ancient absence. Venus, as we see it now, is a world that is almost perfectly dry. The heat on its surface is so intense that if a drop of water were to fall there, it would vanish into vapor in an instant. The planet seems to have been born of fire, a world that has never known the cool, soothing touch of a river or a sea. But here, in this deepest of paradoxes, the science tells us a different story. Buried in the chemistry of the thick, heavy atmosphere is a quiet, ghostly whisper of a different past. It is the faintest of clues, a chemical echo that suggests Venus was not always this way. Imagine two gardens, two beautiful glass greenhouses standing side by side. The first is our own world, Earth. It is a masterpiece of balance. The glass lets in the perfect amount of sunlight, and when the air inside grows too warm, 1,000 tiny vents in the roof open up, allowing the excess heat to gently exhale back into the sky. The air is warm and moist, but it circulates. It is a living, breathing system, a place of perfect equilibrium where life can flourish. Now, look at the second greenhouse, Venus. It stands just a little closer to the great furnace of the sun. Its glass is just as clear, but its vents have been sealed shut. The sunlight pours in, just as it does next door, but the heat it creates has no way to escape. The moisture in the air begins to build, and the humidity grows thick and heavy. This thick, humid air is even better at trapping heat, and so the temperature begins to climb. The garden is no longer breathing. It is suffocating in its own warmth, the air growing thick and still and heavy until the life within it withers under the relentless, accumulating heat. This is the slow cosmic story of Venus. Billions of years ago, a younger, dimmer sun shone in the sky. It is almost certain that Venus, like Earth, was a world of magnificent liquid oceans. Picture it now, a planet of blue seas and white clouds, a true sister to our own world, reflecting the light of that young sun. But as the sun aged, it grew warmer. This gentle, relentless increase in heat began to evaporate more of the Venusian oceans, filling the air with water vapor. Water vapor is a powerful greenhouse gas. It is the glass in the roof of the greenhouse. As more of it filled the sky, it trapped more of the sun's warmth, which in turn caused the oceans to evaporate even faster. It was a gentle but unstoppable feedback loop. The planet's vents had sealed shut. The oceans slowly, inexorably boiled away into the atmosphere. High in the sky, the sun's relentless ultraviolet rays performed a final, irreversible act. They broke the water molecules apart. The light hydrogen atoms, untethered from their oxygen partners, were too light for the planet's gravity to hold, and they bled away into space, lost forever. The great oceans were unwritten from the book of Venus, one molecule at a time. In other words, we are living in the sky of a world that lost its ability to exhale. Earth has a dynamic and living climate, a system that breathes in warmth and breathes out heat. Venus took a deep breath billions of years ago and has been holding it ever since. The result is the beautiful, terrible stillness we see today. What this really means is that Venus is not a monster, but a profound and poignant memory. It is a testament to the fragile, delicate balance that allows a world to remain habitable. Our sister world, so like our own in its size and its gravity and its place in the solar system, is a quiet reminder that a paradise can be lost through a series of slow, gentle, and irreversible steps. The great oceans are a memory, a ghost in the chemistry of the sky. And this leads us to a calmer, deeper question. In a world without rivers or ice, where do we find the water we need for life? The ghost of Venus's lost oceans haunts the chemistry of its sky. The planet is almost perfectly dry, a profound and seemingly absolute barrier to life as we know it. On Mars, we dream of drilling into the permafrost, of melting the polar ice caps, of finding the water that is frozen and waiting for us. But on Venus, there is no ice to melt, no hidden subterranean sea to tap. The well is truly, completely dry. And so we must learn to become something other than well diggers. We must learn to become rainmakers. Imagine you are a master weaver, sitting at a magnificent silent loom. Before you, you have vast quantities of individual threads in many different colors, gold, white, and a deep invisible gray. Your task is to weave these threads together to create a beautiful, shimmering blue cloth. The cloth is not hidden somewhere in the room. It does not exist yet. But all the ingredients for it are right here, in abundance. You simply need to know the pattern. Our city in the clouds is this loom. The atmosphere of Venus, with its rich and complex chemistry, provides the threads, and the blue cloth we seek to weave is the single, most precious molecule in the universe, water. Our loom does not work with thread, but with molecules. It gently draws in the hazy, golden air. The first thread it seeks is sulfuric acid. We see the name, and we think of poison, but a chemist sees a beautiful, orderly structure, H2SO4, 2 atoms of hydrogen, 1 of sulfur, and 4 of oxygen. The most important of these, the thread we are looking for, is the hydrogen. The city's chemical loom, with quiet, efficient processes, would gently pluck the hydrogen atoms from this molecule. With the hydrogen secured, we now need oxygen. The atmosphere provides this in overwhelming abundance. Over 96% of the air is carbon dioxide, CO2. We can use some of this directly, or we can break it down, releasing its oxygen. Now we have the 2 threads we need, hydrogen and oxygen. The final step in the pattern is the simplest and most ancient in the cosmos. We bring them together. In a quiet chamber, 2 parts hydrogen and 1 part oxygen are combined, and the result is a small, quiet, electrical spark. And in that spark, a miracle occurs. H2O. A single, perfect molecule of pure, clean water is born. Drop by drop, our loom weaves its blue cloth from the golden air. In other words, we are not miners drilling for a hidden well. We are chemists, patiently reassembling a molecule that the sun broke apart billions of years ago. We are reversing the ancient tragedy of Venus, 1 drop at a time. It is a process of incredible elegance, a kind of planetary alchemy where we turn the very air that was once seen as a barrier into the source of our life. The engineers who designed this system would have felt a profound sense of satisfaction watching the first bead of condensation form on a cold pipe, a tiny, perfect sphere of clear liquid, the first drop of a new ocean, created from the breath of a forgotten world. What this really means is that we are living inside our resource. The very air that holds us aloft, the sky that shields us and gives us light, is also our wellspring. It is the ultimate expression of living in harmony with an environment. We are not taking from the planet, we are participating in its chemistry, borrowing its elements to create a closed, perfect loop. Every drop of water would be endlessly recycled, a precious man-made treasure in a world that had forgotten its existence. We have learned to create the water that sustains our bodies, but a life lived without solid ground, without a world beneath our feet, raises a gentler, more profound question for the human soul. We have built a home that is physically perfect. We have light and warmth and protection. We have learned to create our own water, to sip the very air for the resources we need. We have solved the great engineering challenges, the questions of chemistry and physics, but now we arrive at a gentler and perhaps more profound question. What would it feel like, in the quietest moments of your heart, to live your entire life with no solid ground beneath your feet? What does it do to the human spirit to be completely untethered from a world? Imagine a culture of people who are born on a great, silent fleet of ships, sailing a calm, endless, and perfectly blue ocean. They have never seen land. The idea of a shore, of a place where the water stops and something solid begins, is a legend to them, a myth from the time of their ancestors. Their entire sense of the world is shaped by the gentle, constant motion of the ship, by the vast, open horizon, by the feeling of being held up by a medium that is fluid and alive. For them, the word home does not mean a patch of earth. It means the familiar timbers of their vessel, the integrity of the hull that keeps the deep water out. Safety is not the feeling of solid ground, but the skill of the navigator to read the currents and the stars. Their children would be born into this world of gentle, perpetual movement. The soft creak of the ship's structure would be their lullaby. They would learn to walk on a deck that is never perfectly still, their bodies developing a natural, unconscious grace. They would see the world not as a static, fixed thing, but as a place of constant, gentle flow. They would not fear the deep, because the surface is all they have ever known, and they have learned to live in perfect harmony with it. Their connection would be to the water, to the wind, to the great open sky above. They would be a culture of sailors, not of farmers. Our descendants, born in the cloud-top cities of Venus, would be these sailors of the sky. Their psychology, forged over millions of years of our evolution on the solid ground of Earth, would undergo a slow and beautiful transformation. The very concept of down would change. It would not be a direction that ends in a solid foundation, but a direction that simply continues into the deep, warm, and forgotten abyss. A child born in this city might ask their parent, "What does the ground feel like? What is it like to stand on something that doesn't move?" And the parent could only answer with stories, with pictures, with videos of a far-off world called Earth, a place so strange and so magical that you could stand still upon it. In other words, our very definition of what it means to be grounded would have to change. It would no longer be a physical state, but a mental and emotional one. To be grounded would mean to be connected to your community, to be secure in the integrity of your floating home, to have faith in the quiet, beautiful physics that holds you aloft. The foundation of your life would not be rock and soil, but the trust you have in your vessel and your fellow sailors. It would be a profound and peaceful letting go of our most ancient terrestrial instinct. What this really means is that we would have evolved in a single graceful step from a terrestrial species into an atmospheric one. Our souls would have found a new kind of peace, a peace not of stillness, but of perfect, buoyant, and unending motion. It would be a quiet and beautiful solitude, to be the only life in this endless golden sky. And yet a softer clue nudges us further. A faint and mysterious whisper in the chemistry of the clouds themselves suggests we may not be quite as alone as we think. In this serene and solitary home, floating in an endless ocean of golden light, we feel a sense of perfect isolation. We are the sole inhabitants of this atmospheric kingdom, a single seed of life in a vast and sterile sky. But science, in its patient and quiet listening, has detected a faint and unexpected whisper in the clouds of Venus, a single, anomalous note in the planet's grand chemical symphony. It is a molecule so humble, so out of place, that its presence has become a soft, wondrous, and deeply intriguing question mark hanging in the alien air. The molecule is called phosphine. Let's imagine for a moment that you are a botanist exploring a vast and perfectly sterile desert, a place where you know, with scientific certainty, that no complex life can exist. The sand is made of a material that is hostile to roots. There is no water, and the sun's radiation is too harsh. You spend months analyzing the sand, confirming your understanding of this dead world. But then one day, in one of your samples, you find a single complex and delicate molecule that on your world is only ever produced in one way, by living things. It is a molecule that could only be a part of a flower's perfume, a complex organic structure that nature would never create by accident. You would check your instruments, you would run the test 100 times, but if the signal remained, you would be left with a beautiful and baffling mystery. The world is sterile, and yet here is the unmistakable scent of a flower. This is the quiet mystery of phosphine on Venus. Phosphine is a simple molecule made of one phosphorus atom and 3 hydrogen atoms. On a rocky terrestrial world like Venus or Earth, there are only 2 known ways to make it. The first is through immense industrial effort in a highly specialized chemical plant. The second, and far more common way, is through biology. On Earth, phosphine is produced by tiny, anaerobic microbes, life that lives in oxygen-poor environments, like swamps or the guts of animals. It is a byproduct of life, a chemical signature that is as unique and as telling as the scent of a flower. And so, when a team of astronomers, led by a woman named Jane Greaves, pointed their telescopes at Venus in 2017, they were not looking for life. They were simply mapping the chemistry of the clouds. But their instruments detected the faint spectral fingerprint of this humble molecule, floating in that very same temperate, habitable layer of the atmosphere where we have imagined our city. The signal was faint, but it was there. It was a single, unexpected note in the air, a chemical that by all the known rules of planetary chemistry simply should not exist. In other words, we have found a potential clue that this atmospheric ocean may not be as empty as it seems. The discovery of phosphine is not proof of life. It is something far more delicate and perhaps more beautiful. It is the beginning of a genuine scientific mystery. It could be that there is some unknown, exotic volcanic or atmospheric process unique to Venus that is creating this gas. Or it could be the alternative. It could be that in the golden, acidic clouds, a form of life we can barely imagine has found a way to exist, and this humble molecule is the gentle whisper of its presence. What this really means is that our view of Venus has been cracked open, just a little, to let in a sliver of genuine wonder. The planet is no longer just a cautionary tale or a future engineering project. It is now also a place of active and profound scientific inquiry. We look at that calm, golden sky, not just as a potential home, but as a place that might already be inhabited. It invites us to listen more closely, to look more patiently. The sky of Venus is a place of deep and subtle mysteries. This faint whisper of phosphine is one. But there is another, a grand and powerful riddle written not in a single molecule, but in the motion of the entire world. Our city drifts on a gentle, 10-mile-an-hour breeze, a soft and constant current carrying us on a slow, majestic journey around the entire planet. But this gentle breeze is the calm, quiet surface of one of the most profound and beautiful mysteries in our solar system. It is a puzzle of motion, a riddle of impossible speed that defies our understanding of how a planet should behave. It is the mystery of the superrotation. Let's begin with the planet itself, the solid, rocky ball of Venus, hidden deep beneath the clouds. It is a world that barely moves. It rotates on its axis with an almost dreamlike slowness. A single Venusian day, from one sunrise to the next on the surface, is longer than its entire year. The ground beneath the clouds turns at a sluggish, walking pace. If you could stand on the equator of Venus, the world would be rotating so slowly that you could easily jog faster than the planet turns. It is a world in a deep and profound slumber. Now, lift your gaze to the sky, to the great, thick ocean of air that surrounds this sleeping world. And here, everything changes. The atmosphere of Venus does not sleep. It does not drift lazily along with the planet below. It screams. The entire, massive, heavy shell of air, from the cloud tops down to the deep abyss, is a single, unified, colossal hurricane, a global wind that circles the planet at astonishing speed. While the surface takes 243 Earth days to make one turn, the atmosphere makes the same journey in just 4. It is a wind that moves at over 200 miles per hour, a colossal planet-spanning jet stream, 60 times faster than the solid globe it surrounds. Imagine you are standing beside a beautiful painted carousel. The wooden platform itself is turning with an almost imperceptible slowness, a gentle, lazy creep. But the air around it, the very atmosphere of the room, is a swirling invisible vortex, spinning at the speed of a racing car. This is the paradox of Venus. The planet is the slow carousel. The atmosphere is the hurricane. And we have no idea why. Our best computer models, the sophisticated simulations that can predict the weather on Earth with incredible accuracy, cannot explain this. The small amount of energy Venus receives from the sun, and the tiny amount of friction from the slowly turning planet, should not be enough to drive a wind this powerful. It is as if a tiny, gentle push is somehow being amplified into a colossal, planet-spanning shove. There is a missing piece of the puzzle, a hidden engine somewhere in the Venusian system that is driving this incredible, impossible wind. In other words, the gentle breeze we feel from the balcony of our cloud city is a beautiful illusion. We are not drifting in a slow, lazy river. We are inside the quiet, calm eye of a planetary-scale hurricane that never, ever stops. We are moving at hundreds of miles per hour, but because the air and everything in it is moving together, the feeling is one of perfect, serene stillness. It is a motion so vast, so powerful, and so all-encompassing that it feels like a state of rest. What this really means is that Venus is a world of deep, dynamic, and unsolved secrets. It is not a dead, static place. It is a living, breathing, and wildly energetic system that hums with a power we do not yet comprehend. The superrotation is a beautiful, humbling reminder that our understanding of the universe is still in its infancy. It is a mystery that invites us not to conquer, but to listen, to observe, and to wonder. The gentle wind carries us onward, a silent testament to this beautiful riddle, and it carries us to a moment of quiet honest reflection. Neither Mars nor Venus offers us a simple paradise. The time has come to weigh the two great choices before us. We have drifted through two grand and very different dreams. The first was a dream of red earth, of solid ground beneath our feet, a story of pioneering spirit in a world of profound and beautiful emptiness. The second was a dream of golden clouds, of a city held aloft by the air itself, a story of graceful adaptation in a world of overwhelming but manageable abundance. We have seen the beauty and the challenges of each path, and now we arrive at a quiet and thoughtful crossroads. It is time to place these two visions side by side and acknowledge a simple, humbling truth. Neither Mars nor Venus offers us an easy home. To choose Mars is to choose a life of constant, vigilant struggle against scarcity. It is a world that lacks almost everything we need to survive. It lacks air, so we must manufacture it, jealously guarding every molecule in a sealed and pressurized habitat. It lacks warmth, so we must constantly generate heat to fight back the deep, penetrating cold. It lacks protection, so we must bury ourselves deep beneath the soil to hide from the invisible hostility of the sky. It lacks a familiar gravity, so we must constantly fight against the slow, silent decay of our own bodies. To live on Mars is to be a master of conservation, a gardener in a sterile desert, tending a tiny, fragile bubble of life in a world that is fundamentally indifferent to it. It is a choice of immense and noble hardship, a testament to the human will to endure. To choose Venus is to choose a life of constant, vigilant management of abundance. It is a world that has too much of everything. It has too much atmosphere, so we cannot live on its surface, and must instead find a gentle, buoyant home in its sky. It has too much heat, so we must float above the furnace-like depths. It has an air rich with chemicals that are corrosive, so we must build our home from materials that are indifferent to their touch. It is a world where all the resources we could ever need exist in overwhelming quantities, but they are woven into the very fabric of the environment, and we must learn the delicate chemistry required to harvest them. To live in the clouds of Venus is to be a master of engineering, a sailor on a vast and powerful ocean, learning to navigate its currents and respect its rules. It is a choice of elegant and sophisticated hardship, a testament to the human intellect to adapt. In other words, we are not choosing between an easy world and a hard one. We are choosing our preferred flavor of difficulty. It is a choice that is less about the planets themselves and more about who we see ourselves to be. Do we see ourselves as pioneers, rugged and determined, capable of making a home in the harshest of empty lands? Or do we see ourselves as sailors, graceful and intelligent, capable of building a home in the heart of a powerful and dynamic system? One path is about building a fortress against the void. The other is about building a vessel to sail upon the deep. What this really means is that our future in the solar system is not a simple question of picking the best planet. It is a profound philosophical choice about our relationship with the universe. Mars represents a story of human tenacity, of our ability to impose our will upon a barren landscape. Venus represents a story of human ingenuity, of our ability to find a gentle niche within a grand and powerful one. Both are beautiful, both are challenging, and both ask us to become more than we are today. This choice is not just for a single generation. The path we take will ripple outwards, setting the stage for a dream so vast it will take millennia to unfold. The next step is to not just live on these worlds, but perhaps to heal them. Having chosen our home in the sky, a sanctuary of balance in a world of extremes, we now lift our gaze to a dream that feels like it belongs to the realm of myth. We have learnt to live asterisk within asterisk Venus. But what if, over the course of 1,000 lifetimes, we could learn to gently, patiently heal the planet itself? What if we could give it back the breath it lost so long ago? This is the slow, grand and speculative dream of terraforming, and for Venus, it begins not with an act of construction, but with an act of beautiful, deliberate shadow. Imagine our city as a ship sailing on a golden sea. Now imagine that our descendants, generations from now, decide to build something far grander. It is not another city, but a colossal work of cosmic art, an umbrella for a planet. They would begin by constructing a vast, impossibly thin sheet of reflective material, perhaps assembled by robots in the silent, cold vacuum of space. This is not a solid, heavy shield, but something more like a fine, shimmering mesh, a film of material so thin that light itself can push it. This would be a solar shade, a structure designed to be placed at a point of gravitational balance between Venus and the Sun, a place where it can hang forever, a permanent man-made eclipse. Picture this structure in the sky. From our cloud-topped cities, it would not be a dark circle blotting out the sun. It would be a new star in the heavens, a point of brilliant, steady light as the sun's rays glint off its far side. Its effect would be a slow, gentle, and almost imperceptible cooling. It would be designed to block just a small fraction of the sunlight reaching Venus, perhaps only a few percent. It is not a sudden violent change, but the softest of touches, a subtle and persistent nudge to a system that has been stuck for billions of years. It is the cosmic equivalent of cracking open a window in a room that has grown too hot. The first effects would be infinitesimally small. Over the course of a century, the average temperature of the upper atmosphere might drop by a single degree, but this is a project that does not measure its success in human lifetimes, but in geological ages. The shade would hang there, silent and patient, a testament to a vision that spans millennia. As the centuries pass, the cooling would continue, a slow, gentle exhalation of the planet's trapped heat. The great, thick, heavy blanket of atmosphere would begin, ever so slightly, to calm its fever. In other words, we are choosing to become the gentle counterforce to the runaway greenhouse effect. We are not fighting the planet with brute force. We are applying a delicate and precise touch, a soft shadow that allows the world to begin its own long, slow process of healing. It is an act of profound and patient gardening on a planetary scale. We are not just inhabitants of this world, we have become its thoughtful and far-sighted custodians. What this really means is that we are embracing a timescale that is almost beyond our comprehension. It is a dream that requires a level of patience and generational commitment that our own culture can barely imagine. To build a solar shade for Venus is to plant a forest of redwood trees that your great-great-grandchildren will never see fully grown. It is an act of supreme optimism, a promise made to a future so distant it is almost abstract, a belief that humanity can learn to think not in years or even in centuries, but in the slow, deep, quiet rhythm of a planet's own life. This gentle, patient cooling is only the first step. The shadow is in place, and the planet begins to exhale. And now, in the cooling upper air, we begin the second act. We will learn to seed the skies. The great solar shade hangs in the void, a patient and silent guardian, and under its gentle shadow, the planet begins to breathe. For centuries, perhaps for millennia, the work of this delicate eclipse has continued, slowly, steadily allowing the trapped ancient heat of Venus to radiate away into the cold of space. The planet's fever, which raged for 1 billion years, has begun to break. High in the atmosphere, in that same temperate layer where our own cities float, the change is subtle but profound. The air is still thick, still dense, but it is no longer superheated. It is ready. It has become a fallow field, waiting for a seed. And so begins the second great act of this slow and epic dream. This is the work of the planetary ecologists, the descendants of the engineers who built the shade. Their tools are not wrenches and rivets, but the quiet, powerful engines of life itself. In great silent laboratories floating in the clouds, they have cultivated something new, a form of life designed for this very moment. Imagine a kind of microscopic plankton, like the tiny sun-drinking organisms that fill Earth's oceans. But this is an aeroplankton, a sky plankton, engineered to be breathtakingly resilient. It is designed to float on the high-altitude winds, to be indifferent to the lingering traces of acid, and most importantly, to perform a single sacred task. It is designed to breathe in the thick carbon dioxide of the Venusian air, and using the soft filtered light of the distant sun to break it apart, keeping the carbon to build its own tiny body, and releasing the oxygen as a single precious gift. Now, picture the moment of seeding. From our cities, or from specialized ships that sail the upper winds, a new kind of snow begins to fall, but it is a snow that falls sideways and upwards, caught in the atmospheric currents. It is a fine, shimmering, iridescent dust, a cloud of countless trillions of these tiny, living suncatchers released into the sky. It is not an industrial process. It is a gesture of profound and gentle hope, an act of inoculation on a planetary scale. The sky itself is being brought to life. These tiny organisms are living catalysts. Each one is an infinitesimal biological machine, performing a quiet chemical miracle. They replicate, they spread, they drift on the 4-day winds, and with every passing moment, the great work continues. trillions upon trillions of them, each one breathing in a molecule of CO2 and breathing out a molecule of O2. The change is imperceptibly slow. After 100 years, the composition of the atmosphere might have shifted by only a fraction of a single percent, but the process, once begun, is relentless. It is the slow, patient, and unstoppable power of life itself. In other words, we are teaching the sky to breathe again. We are giving the planet a metabolism, a living biological lung, where for billions of years there has only been a static chemical stillness. It is the ultimate expression of our role as custodians. We are not just living in this world, we are now partners with it, participants in its grand, slow-motion rebirth. The hope of these generations of Venusians would be a quiet and deeply patient one, as they watch the instruments that measure the air, celebrating a change that they and their children will never see completed. What this really means is that we have planted a garden in the sky. It is a garden that will take 10,000 years to bloom, but the seeds have been sown. We have given Venus the gift of a biosphere, a tiny, humble, and incredibly powerful engine of change. The slow, patient work of these microscopic lives will transform the very nature of the world. However, as the great blanket of air grows thinner, as the carbon is slowly pulled from the sky and turned into life, it begins to release what it has held for so long. The sky prepares to give back the oceans it once stole. The seeding of the skies continues, a slow and patient biological fire that burns for uncounted generations. The microscopic life we have gifted to the planet has flourished, a thin, iridescent, living layer in the upper atmosphere, breathing in the thick, heavy air and breathing out the clear, sharp gift of oxygen. For millennia, this quiet work has gone on, and the very nature of the Venusian sky has begun to change. The thick, heavy, planet-enshrouding blanket is molecule by molecule becoming thinner. The immense crushing pressure of the atmosphere is slowly, gently beginning to release its grip, as the carbon dioxide is pulled from the air, turned into living biomass that gently drifts and settles downwards. The atmosphere loses its power to trap heat. The greenhouse, which has been sealed for billions of years, now has its windows thrown wide open. The cooling of the planet, which began with the delicate shadow of the solar shade, now accelerates. The heat of the deep atmosphere and the still glowing surface can now radiate freely into space. The planet is finally, truly, exhaling its ancient, trapped fever. And as the temperature drops, as the atmosphere thins, a moment of profound and breathtaking transformation arrives. Imagine watching a pot of water on a stove. As it heats up, steam rises from the surface. This is the state of Venus for billions of years. Now, imagine turning off the flame and placing a cold lid on the pot. The steam, as it touches the cool surface, condenses, turning back into liquid, forming beads of clear water. The same thing now happens to the entire planet. High in the atmosphere, as the temperatures fall below a critical threshold, the carbon dioxide that still remains can no longer stay as a gas. It begins to condense. The first sign is a new kind of cloud, a delicate shimmering veil of dry ice crystals, a form of snow that has not been seen on this world for an eon. For a time, the planet might be shrouded in a gentle, perpetual snowfall of carbon dioxide, covering the high plateaus and mountains in a layer of white frost. But as the cooling continues, as the pressure continues to drop, this snow will melt, and then the great rain begins. It is a rain unlike any that has ever been seen. It is not a rain of water, but of liquid carbon dioxide, a gentle, globe-spanning downpour that lasts for centuries. It is the atmosphere itself falling out of the sky. The thick, heavy air that defined the planet for its entire history is now returning to the surface, not as a crushing, invisible force, but as a cool, clear liquid, filling the lowlands, carving new rivers into the ancient volcanic rock, and beginning to pool in the vast dry basins that were once, so very long ago, the planet's oceans. In other words, we are witnessing the great and final unraveling of the runaway greenhouse effect. The atmosphere, which stole the oceans and held the planet hostage for billions of years, is now giving them back. It is a moment of profound, almost mythological climax. The slow dream of the terraformers, the patient work of the solar shade, and the seeded skies has led to this, a world being washed clean by its own sky. What this really means is that we are not just healing a planet, we are midwives at its rebirth. We are watching the fundamental state of a world transform before our eyes, a change as profound as a star igniting or a moon being born. And as the carbon dioxide rain subsides, as the sky thins to a gentle, breathable pressure, the final step can be taken. The comets, great icy bodies from the outer solar system, can be gently nudged from their orbits and sent on a final glorious journey to bring back the water, the true water, that was lost so long ago. But this grand millennial dream is the end of a very long story. Before any of it can happen, we must first learn to thrive, and our civilization in the clouds will grow not downwards, but outwards. That grand and epic dream of a reborn, blue ocean Venus is a destination that lies on an impossibly distant horizon, a story for our descendants 1,000 times removed. Before that far-off dawn, our civilization in the clouds must first learn to grow, to mature, to create a lasting and beautiful culture in its own right. The first floating city, a single magnificent pearl, is a proof of concept, a solitary outpost of humanity in this golden sky. But one city is not a civilization, and so the next chapter of our story is one of connection, of expansion, of stringing a new and luminous constellation in the heavens of our sister world. Imagine our first city, the asterisk Sagan asterisk perhaps, or the asterisk Venera asterisk, floating serenely on the 4-day winds. It is a thriving, bustling home, a marvel of engineering, and a testament to the human spirit. For a generation, it is enough. But soon the children of this city, born and raised in the clouds, will feel the same gentle, persistent call that has always defined our species, the desire to see what lies beyond the next hill, or in this case, beyond the soft, hazy horizon. And so they begin to build a second city. Using the resources sipped from the air, they construct a new vessel, another great buoyant habitat, perhaps a sister city with a different design, a different philosophy, a different art. When it is complete, it is released, and it drifts on its own journey, finding its own current in the vast atmospheric ocean. Soon there are 3 cities, then 10, then 50. They are not clones of one another. Each one develops its own unique character, its own culture, its own traditions. Some might be great centers of science and learning, their inhabitants dedicated to unraveling the planet's mysteries. Others might be agricultural hubs, vast flying greenhouses filled with the light of 1,000 sun lamps, growing the food for the entire network. Still others might be centers of art and music, creating new forms of expression born from a life lived in a world without a ground. And then comes the great work of connection. High-speed automated shuttles, like silent, graceful birds, would fly between the cities, weaving a constant, invisible thread of commerce and communication. Great floating bridges, enclosed, transparent tubes held aloft by their own buoyancy, might one day connect the closest cities, allowing for a casual stroll from one to the other, a walk through the sky, with the endless cloudscape scrolling by beneath your feet. It would be a true network, a living, breathing, interdependent society, spread across the entire circumference of the planet. In other words, we would have created a new kind of global civilization. On Earth, our nations are separated by the hard lines of continents and oceans. Here, there are no borders, only the gentle fluid dynamics of the atmosphere. The cities would be like a great glowing string of pearls, a necklace draped around the planet's equator, drifting in a slow and silent 4-day dance. At night, or in the soft twilight phase of the Venusian day, this necklace would be visible from space, a luminous ring of light, a testament to a new and graceful kind of human expansion. What this really means is that we have chosen a path of growth that is fundamentally different from our past. It is not a story of conquest, of claiming territory and defending it. It is a story of weaving, of creating a society that is as fluid, as interconnected, and as dynamic as the sky it inhabits. It is a civilization that is not built on a foundation of rock, but on a foundation of community, of trade, and of shared purpose. This new way of living, of spreading not across a surface but through a volume, raises a gentle, expansive question about our own ultimate destiny. It tilts us toward a larger room. This glowing string of pearls, this peaceful, interconnected civilization that sails the golden skies, is more than just a new home. It is a quiet and profound turning point in the human story. For our entire existence, from the first moment our ancestors stood upright on the savannas of Africa, we have been a creature of the surface. Our bodies, our minds, our cultures, our very languages are soaked in the experience of living on the solid ground of a planet. We are a terrestrial species, defined by the horizon, by the feeling of the earth beneath our feet, by the act of looking up at the sky. But here, in the clouds of Venus, we have become something else. Imagine a species of intelligent marine life that has lived for its entire history in the great sunlit photic zone of an ocean, never knowing the surface, never knowing the deep. Their entire reality is the water, the currents, the feeling of buoyancy. Then one day, a few brave explorers from this species learn to survive in the thin, strange medium above the waves. They learn to breathe the air. They learn to fly. They have not just found a new place to live, they have fundamentally transformed what it means to be a member of their species. They have transcended their original medium. Our journey to the clouds of Venus is this same kind of transcendence. We would have gracefully, thoughtfully, stepped off the solid ground and learned to live in the great airy oceans of the universe. We would have become, in the truest sense of the word, an atmospheric species. Our relationship with the cosmos would have fundamentally shifted. A planet would no longer be just a ball of rock to stand on. It would be a layered, voluminous, three-dimensional space to inhabit. We would learn to read the weather of alien worlds as a sailor reads the sea, to understand the chemistry of an atmosphere as a farmer understands the soil. This transformation would ripple outwards into our future in the galaxy. When we look at the gas giants of our own solar system, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, we would no longer see them as hostile, untouchable worlds with no solid surface to land on. We would see them as the greatest atmospheric oceans of all, places of unimaginable scale and complexity, each with its own temperate, habitable layers, its own unique chemical resources, its own calm harbours waiting high in their colossal skies. The skills and the technologies we perfected in the clouds of Venus would become our key to unlocking 1,000 new worlds, not just in our solar system, but across the vast starry archipelago of the Milky Way. In other words, Venus is not just a destination, it is a school. It is the place where we learn the art of atmospheric living. It is our training ground for a future in which humanity is no longer bound to the planetary surface, but is free to find a home in the great airy seas that we now know are a common feature of the cosmos. It is a gentle but profound graduation. What this really means is that the choice of Venus is a choice that opens up a grander, more expansive future for our species. It is the first step on a path that could lead us to become a truly galactic civilization, one that is not limited to the rare, rocky, Earth-like worlds, but one that can find a home in the skies of countless different kinds of planets. It is a future that is not about finding another Earth, but about learning to be at home anywhere. This expansive atmospheric dream is one possible future. But to fully appreciate its poetry, we must look, one last time, at the corresponding grand dream for our other neighbour. The story of Mars is not one of sailing, but one of gardening, a different epic of engineering, told in a different language. Let us now leave our atmospheric sailors and their string of pearls, and make one final gentle journey back to the red desert world. We have seen the grand speculative dream for Venus, a slow, patient cooling, a seeding of the skies, a return of the oceans. Now we must imagine the corresponding dream for Mars, a planetary engineering project of the same epic scale, but one that is a perfect and beautiful opposite. Venus needs to be cooled and thinned. Mars needs to be warmed and thickened. One is a story of opening a window, the other is a story of closing one. Imagine Mars as a garden that has been left untended in a deep cosmic winter. The soil is fertile, rich with the minerals needed for life. The water is there, a vast and silent reservoir, but it is frozen solid, locked away as permafrost deep beneath the ground and in the great shimmering polar ice caps. The air is too thin to hold the sun's warmth, and so a perpetual killing frost lies upon the land. The task of the Martian terraformer is not to provide a shadow, but to build a greenhouse. They must find a way to thicken the atmosphere, to drape a new, heavier blanket over the sleeping world, to coax it back into a gentle planetary spring. The work would begin not with shades, but with mirrors. Great orbital mirrors, vast gossamer-thin sheets of reflective film, would be positioned in the sky above the poles. They would catch the pale, distant sunlight and focus it, like a gentle magnifying glass, onto the bright white caps of frozen carbon dioxide and water ice. Under this slow, persistent, artificial warmth, the ice would begin to sublevate, turning directly from a solid into a gas. For centuries, this silent, patient work would continue, slowly, steadily, pumping the planet's own frozen air back into the sky. At the same time, great automated factories on the surface, perhaps powered by the planet's geothermal heat, would begin their own quiet work. They would drill into the Martian soil, which is rich with nitrates and other trapped gases, and heat them, releasing them into the air. Most importantly, they would be designed to produce vast quantities of greenhouse gases, not the pollutants of our own industrial age, but carefully chosen, powerful, and long-lasting molecules designed for one purpose: to be incredibly good at trapping heat. A slow, invisible fog of these gases would begin to fill the Martian sky. As the atmosphere grows thicker, a gentle feedback loop begins, just as it did on Venus, but in reverse. The thicker air can hold more warmth, which melts more of the polar ice, which thickens the air even further. The planet's winter is beginning to break. The first sign of spring would be the arrival of liquid water. As the pressure and temperature rise, the permafrost in the equatorial regions would begin to melt. For the first time in billions of years, a trickle of real, liquid water might flow down a dry Martian riverbed. The red dust would turn to dark mud. The first clouds of water vapor would appear in the pale pink sky. In other words, the dream for Mars is one of planetary resuscitation. It is the slow, careful, and deliberate act of taking a world that is in a state of suspended animation and gently, patiently warming it back to life. It is an act of planetary gardening on the most epic scale imaginable. What this really means is that the two great dreams are perfect reflections of each other. For Venus, we must subtract. For Mars, we must add. One requires us to become masters of shadow and biology. The other requires us to become masters of light and industry. Both are stories of incredible hope, of a future in which humanity has learned not just to visit other worlds, but to become a force for planetary healing and renewal. These two grand millennial dreams represent two different paths, two different philosophies, two different futures, and in them we can see a beautiful, poetic reflection of ourselves. As we hold these two immense parallel dreams in our minds, the slow greening of Mars and the gentle clearing of Venus, we begin to see that they are more than just engineering projects. They are stories. They are two different epics about humanity's place in the universe, and each one speaks to a deep and ancient part of our own spirit. They are the stories of the pioneer and the sailor. The dream of Mars is the story of the pioneer. Imagine a lone figure, wrapped in furs against a biting wind, standing at the edge of a vast empty prairie. The land is harsh, silent, and unforgiving. There is no shelter to be found, no food to be gathered. Everything needed for survival, the seeds for the first crops, the tools to build a home, the warmth of a fire, must be brought with them, carried on their back across an immense distance. Their life is a testament to endurance, to a quiet and stubborn refusal to be broken by the emptiness of the land. They are defined by their tenacity, their self-reliance, their ability to create a tiny circle of warmth and life in a world of profound indifference. This is the spirit of Mars. It is a story that speaks to our strength, our grit, our deep primal need to put down roots and make a stand against the wilderness. Now picture the sailor. This figure stands on the deck of a graceful, complex vessel, surrounded by a vast and powerful ocean. The ocean is not empty. It is a living, dynamic, and sometimes dangerous system. The sailor cannot tame the ocean. They cannot command the winds or calm the currents. Instead, they have learned to live in harmony with it. Their survival depends not on stubborn endurance, but on elegant adaptation. They have studied the tides. They understand the language of the clouds. They know how to read the stars. Their vessel is a masterpiece of ingenuity, designed to bend with the waves, to catch the wind, to use the power of the ocean to carry them on their journey. Their life is a testament to intelligence, to grace, to the ability to find a safe and gentle path through a world of overwhelming power. This is the spirit of Venus. It is a story that speaks to our intellect, our ingenuity, our ability to understand and work within a system far grander than ourselves. In other words, these two worlds call to two different parts of our soul. Mars calls to the farmer in us, the part that wants to feel the soil in our hands, to build a sturdy home of stone and wood, to claim a piece of land and call it our own. Venus calls to the sailor in us, the part that loves the feel of the wind, the creak of a well-made ship, the thrill of navigating by skill and by wit through a world that is always in motion. The pioneer story is one of conquering a frontier. The sailor story is one of mastering a craft. What this really means is that our future in space is not a single monolithic story. It is a choice of narratives. Both the pioneer and the sailor are heroic figures. Both represent a beautiful and noble aspect of the human spirit. The question of where we should go next is not just about which planet is more practical, but about which story we want to tell ourselves in the next great chapter of our journey. This choice forces us to look deeper, to ask a question that lies beneath all the science and all the engineering. It forces us to ask what a home truly is. This choice between two worlds, between the path of the pioneer and the path of the sailor, brings us to a quiet and deeply personal place. It asks us to look past the grand canvases of planetary engineering and cosmic voyages and to consider a single humble word, a word that holds all of our deepest longings. What does it truly mean to build a home? Is it about the soil beneath our feet, or is it about the life we create in a place? For all of our history, the idea of home has been inextricably linked to the land. It is a patch of earth, a place with a history written in its rocks and its rivers. It is the feeling of solid ground, of a foundation that does not move. The dream of Mars is a continuation of this ancient story. It is the search for a new ground, a new earth, a place to put down roots in the most literal sense. It is a dream of finding a rock and building our future upon it. The challenges are immense, but the shape of the dream is familiar. It is the ancestral human story, transplanted to a new red soil. It is a definition of home that we carry in our very bones. But the dream of Venus offers a gentle and profound counter-argument. It suggests that perhaps home is not the ground, but the garden. Perhaps it is not the foundation, but the vessel. A home in this new telling is any place where life can be sheltered, where it can be nurtured, where it can be allowed to flourish in safety and in peace. The sailors on their great ships in the endless ocean never touched the land, but were they homeless? The vessel was their home. The community within it was their nation. The sky sailors of Venus would feel the same. Their home is not a planet, but a city. It is not a landscape of rock, but a carefully tended ecosystem of air and light and life, floating in a place that allows it to exist. Imagine a beautiful, delicate orchid. You can try to plant this orchid in the harsh, dry soil of a desert. You can water it and shelter it and fight a constant losing battle against an environment that is fundamentally hostile to its existence. Or you can build a greenhouse, a perfect, climate-controlled sanctuary where the orchid is not just surviving, but thriving, its blossoms opening in a place of perfect warmth and gentle, misty light. Which one is its true home? The desert, where it is constantly under siege, or the greenhouse, where it can finally be what it was meant to be? In other words, Venus asks us to redefine our concept of belonging. It suggests that a home is not something you find, but something you create. It is the act of building the greenhouse, of finding the perfect gentle niche where the fragile flower of human life can be safe and can grow. It is a shift from geology to ecology. The home is the space that supports life, wherever that space might be found. What this really means is that our journey into space is also a journey into ourselves. It is a chance to examine our oldest assumptions. Is our destiny forever tied to the hard, rocky surfaces of worlds? Or is our destiny simply to carry the seed of life outwards and to learn to build a garden for it, wherever we find a patch of gentle cosmic sunlight? The choice between Mars and Venus is not just about choosing a destination, it is about choosing a definition. It is about deciding what kind of home we want to build among the stars. And now, as our journey nears its end, let us stand for a moment in that home. Let us feel what it is like to be there, in a quiet, simple, and profoundly human moment. Let us leave behind the grand sweep of millennia, the epic dreams of terraforming, and the philosophical questions of what it means to be human. Let us come to a single, quiet and present moment. You are here, now. You are standing on a balcony, a small open space high on the outer edge of a city that is floating in a golden sky. The air is warm and soft against your skin, moving with a gentle, persistent breeze. The feeling is not of being on a machine, but of being on the deck of a great silent ship, sailing a calm and endless sea. The floor beneath your feet is not cold stone or metal, but a smooth, warm material, perhaps a kind of engineered wood grown in the city's own biofactories. You are leaning on a simple, elegant railing, its surface cool and pleasant to the touch. It is strong, and it feels safe. There is a small potted plant next to you, a cascade of vibrant green leaves, a descendant of some ancient earthly vine, perfectly adapted now to this life in the sky. Its presence is a small, quiet miracle of belonging. You look out. There is no ground. There is only the view, a view that stretches for 1,000 miles in every direction. Below you is the cloudscape, the reason you came out here. It is a soft, ever-changing landscape of impossible scale. You see mountains of vapor, 1,000 times larger than Everest, moving with a slowness that is hypnotic. You see deep, swirling canyons of golden haze, great, continent-spanning rivers of mist. The light is everywhere, a diffuse, gentle glow that seems to emanate from the very air itself, casting no sharp shadows, creating a world of soft edges and infinite depth. The colors are a palette of cream and gold and a soft, hazy amber. It is a view that is not static, but is alive, breathing with a slow, planetary rhythm. There is a sound. It is not silence, but something deeper. It is the faintest, lowest frequency hum, a sound so deep it is felt more in the bones than it is heard with the ears. It is the sound of the city itself, the gentle, harmonious vibration of 1,000,000 tiny systems working in perfect concert. It is the sound of the wind, not as a whistle or a howl, but as a steady, quiet pressure against the vast hull of your home. It is a sound of profound and unshakable peace, the sound of a place that is in perfect equilibrium with its world. In this moment, standing on this balcony, you feel no sense of vertigo, no fear of falling. You feel only a sense of buoyancy, of being held. The city does not feel like it is hanging precariously in the air. It feels like it is resting, securely and permanently, upon the thick, dense medium that supports it. You feel a sense of belonging that is as deep and as real as any that has ever been felt by a human standing on solid ground. You are home. You are a sailor on a golden sea, and the view from your deck is the most beautiful in the universe. In other words, this is a moment of pure and simple being. It is the quiet reward for all the grand engineering and all the brave exploration. It is the human experience at the heart of the dream, a moment of peace, a moment of safety, a moment of breathtaking and yet calming beauty. What this really means is that a life here is not a life of hardship or of constant sterile survival. It is a life that can be, and will be, filled with moments of quiet, simple and profound joy. It is a life where a human being can stand and watch the clouds and feel perfectly, completely at peace. And in that peace, looking out at the forces that shape this alien world, you see a gentle and unmistakable reflection of the world you came from. As you stand there on that quiet balcony, mesmerized by the slow, majestic dance of the golden clouds, a new and deeper understanding begins to settle. At first, this world felt alien, a place of impossible extremes, a perfect opposite to the familiar blue and green of home. But now, as you watch the slow, continental-scale weather patterns, as you feel the deep, insulating warmth held by the thick atmosphere, you begin to see a reflection. In this strange golden sky, you see the story of Earth, told in a different and more dramatic language. You are watching a greenhouse effect in its purest, most powerful form. You are living inside a testament to the power of an atmosphere to capture and hold the energy of its star. And in this you see a living, breathing model of the very same forces that operate on your home world. Earth's atmosphere is a far more delicate and complex machine, a beautiful, intricate dance of gases that holds our world in a perfect, life-giving balance. But the fundamental principles are the same. The light comes in, the heat is held, and a planet becomes a home. Here on Venus, that system has been turned up to its absolute maximum. It is a cautionary tale, yes, but it is also a magnificent, planetary-scale laboratory. From your vantage point in the Venusian sky, you can look back at Earth with a new and profound sense of clarity. You see the thin, fragile, almost invisible veil of our own atmosphere, and you understand it not as an empty space, but as a precious, living ocean, the very thing that shields us from the void and cradles us in its gentle warmth. You see the swirling patterns of our own clouds, the hurricanes and the gentle weather fronts, and you see in them a smaller, faster, but no less majestic version of the great, slow currents that carry your own floating city. You understand, in a way you never could before, that the climate of a world is not a static background, but the very heart of its metabolism. In other words, by coming to this alien place, you have learned to see your own home more clearly. Venus is the mirror that Earth holds up to itself. In its runaway heat, we see the power of the forces we are now beginning to toy with ourselves. In its thick, protective shield, we see the precious gift of our own magnetic field and ozone layer. In its lost oceans, we see the irreplaceability of our own. It is a lesson in planetary science that is not learned from a book, but is felt in the very air around you. What this really means is that our journey to Venus is also a journey home. It is a pilgrimage that gives us the perspective to truly appreciate the miracle of our own world. We are not just colonists on a new frontier. We are students, learning the profound and delicate rules that govern the life of a planet. And in that learning, we find a new and deeper sense of responsibility, a quiet and urgent call to be better custodians of the beautiful blue and fragile garden we left behind. This perspective, this new way of seeing, allows us to look at the story of Venus, not as a tragedy, but as something far more hopeful. It is the poetry of a world that offers us a second chance. For so long, the story of Venus in the human imagination has been a tragedy. We saw it as a paradise lost, a world that took a wrong turn and fell into a fiery, inescapable end. It was a cosmic cautionary tale, a grim reminder of how fragile a planetary Eden can be. From the safety of our own blue world, we looked upon our sister with a mixture of pity and fear. She was the beautiful star that held a terrible secret, the garden that had withered and died. But from our new home floating peacefully in her golden sky, we can see that this was never the whole story. The final chapter had not yet been written. By learning to live here, not on the hostile ground but in the gentle, habitable layers of the sky, we have changed the narrative. We did not conquer the planet. We did not try to fix its ancient planet-wide wounds with brute force. Instead, we found a place of grace within it. We learnt to sail upon its atmospheric sea, to sip the resources from its air, to respect its immense power, and to work with it, not against it. In doing so, we have given this world a new kind of life. We have brought the human mind with its capacity for wonder, for art, for love, to a place that has been sterile for 1 billion years. The tragedy has been given a new and unexpected final act. Imagine finding a magnificent ancient tree in a forest, a tree so old and so vast it seems like a monument, but the core of the tree has been hollowed out by a fire that happened 1,000 years ago. The heartwood is gone, turned to ash. The old story of this tree is one of loss, but then you look closer, and you see that in the hollow, sheltered from the wind and the rain, a new and delicate ecosystem has taken root. Ferns are growing, a bird has built its nest, 1,000 tiny forms of life have created a home in the very place that was defined by its emptiness. The hollow is no longer a scar, it is a sanctuary. The story is no longer about the fire that happened long ago, it is about the new life that is happening now. This is what we have done in the sky of Venus. We have built our nest in the hollow of a world that lost its heart, and in doing so, we have redeemed its story. The planet is no longer just a monument to a runaway greenhouse effect. It is now also the home of humanity's most elegant and sophisticated civilization. It is a story of adaptation, of ingenuity, and of finding life in the most unexpected of gardens. It is a quiet promise that there are no dead ends in the universe, only new and unexpected beginnings. In other words, Venus has given us a second chance to get it right. It has taught us to be a different kind of explorer, a gentler and more intelligent kind of pioneer. It has forced us to let go of our old terrestrial dreams of conquest and to embrace a new philosophy of living in harmony with the world, rather than trying to bend it to our will. What this really means is that the story of Venus is ultimately a story of hope. It is a profound and beautiful testament to the idea that even in a place that seems lost, a place that seems broken, life and intelligence can find a way, not just to survive, but to create something beautiful, something peaceful, something new. And in this new creation, in this choice between two very different paths, we find a final, quiet reflection on the nature of our own spirit. And so, in these two grand and possible futures, these two epic stories of planetary rebirth, we find a final, clear reflection of the human spirit itself. The choice between Mars and Venus is not just a choice of where to go, but a choice of who to be. It reveals that within us, there are two different kinds of courage, two different kinds of strength, waiting to be called upon. The path to Mars calls forth the weightlifter within us. Imagine the profound and simple challenge of lifting a colossal weight. the environment of Mars is a dead, heavy, and unyielding resistance. It is the cold iron barbell of a universe that does not give. To survive there, to build a home there, requires a direct and heroic application of force. It is an act of pure, focused will. It is the gritting of teeth, the tensing of every muscle, the pouring of all our energy into a single, defiant act of overcoming. The spirit of Mars is the spirit of tenacity. It is our ability to face an inert and overwhelming obstacle, and through sheer, stubborn and magnificent effort, to lift it, to move it, to build a life in spite of it. It is the beauty of human resilience in its most raw and powerful form. The path to Venus, however, calls forth a different hero, the master of a gentle martial art. The challenge of Venus is not a dead weight. It is an immense and powerful force in motion. It is the crushing weight of the atmosphere, the relentless energy of the super-rotating winds, the complex and reactive chemistry of the clouds. To face this kind of power with direct confrontational force would be to be instantly broken, and so we learn a different way. We do not stand against the current, we learn to flow with it. We do not try to lift the crushing atmosphere, we find the perfect point of balance within it, where it lifts us instead. We do not fight the planet's energy, we redirect it, using its own properties to our advantage. The spirit of Venus is the spirit of grace. It is our ability to understand a powerful system, not as an adversary, but as a partner, and to find a path of perfect intelligent harmony within it. It is the beauty of human ingenuity in its most elegant and sophisticated form. In other words, Mars asks us to be strong, Venus asks us to be wise. One path requires us to be masters of endurance, to be the unmovable object that can withstand the void. The other requires us to be masters of adaptation, to be the flowing water that can find its way through any landscape. Both are profound expressions of our capacity to survive and to thrive. What this really means is that our future in the cosmos is a mirror to our own complex nature. We contain both the stubborn will of the weightlifter and the elegant grace of the martial artist. We are at once creatures of brute force and of subtle understanding. The question then is not which planet is better, but which aspect of ourselves do we choose to cultivate? Which story of the human spirit do we want to write in the sky? We have travelled far on this journey and seen our own reflection in these two distant worlds, and now all that is left is the gentle return, a slow drift back to the quiet place where all great journeys begin and end. Our long journey is drawing to a close now. Let us gently pull back our gaze from these two grand and distant dreams. Let the images of the red deserts and the golden clouds begin to soften, to fade into a peaceful, luminous memory. We can leave the choice between the pioneer and the sailor to rest for another time. The great debates of engineering and philosophy can be left for the quiet light of a new day. For now, we simply begin the slow and gentle return journey, carrying the feelings of this exploration with us as we drift back towards the present moment. Imagine you are in a small, comfortable vessel, a craft designed for quiet contemplation that has been travelling between these two worlds. For a long time, your window has been filled with the brilliant, mesmerizing gold of Venus, or the deep, earthy red of Mars. But now the pilot has gently turned your vessel around, and in the center of the window you see a familiar and achingly beautiful sight. It is a single bright star, a marble of swirling blue and white, hanging in the deep, silent velvet of space. It is home. As your vessel glides silently through the dark, you carry the feeling of Venus with you. It is a sense of buoyancy, of lightness, of being held aloft by a force you trust completely. You remember the endless soft golden light, the gentle constant breezes, the profound sense of peace on that balcony in the sky. It is a feeling of grace, of finding a perfect harmony with your surroundings. Let that feeling of gentle, buoyant peace settle in your body now, a warmth in your chest, a lightness in your limbs. You also carry the feeling of Mars with you. It is a sense of quiet strength, of profound and patient endurance. You remember the vast, silent and beautiful emptiness of the red canyons, the feeling of solid, ancient ground beneath your feet, the quiet determination of a people building a home deep within the rock. It is a feeling of resilience, of the deep and unshakable strength that lies within you. Let that feeling of quiet, grounded strength settle in you as well, a sense of stability, of calm, of being securely at rest. In other words, we are leaving the details behind. and carrying only the essence of the journey, the weightlessness of the Venusian dream and the groundedness of the Martian one, the grace of the sailor and the strength of the pioneer. These two feelings, these two stories, are not in conflict. They are two different kinds of peace, and you can hold them both at the same time. What this really means is that we are coming back to ourselves. The universe, with all its grand and wondrous possibilities, is also a mirror for our own inner world. We contain within us the capacity for both graceful adaptation and for stubborn endurance. And as we drift slowly back to our own quiet harbor, we can let these grand cosmic ideas become a soft, gentle lullaby, a reminder of the beautiful complexity that lies both in the stars and within our own hearts. The blue and white star in the window grows a little brighter, the end of our journey is near, and we are left with the quiet echo of the question that started it all. And so we arrive at the end of our long and quiet voyage. We have returned to the calm harbor from which we set sail, the gentle darkness of our own quiet room. The bright images of other worlds, of red canyons and golden clouds, begin to soften now, leaving only a faint and peaceful afterglow in the mind. The journey is complete, and we are left with the quiet, waiting presence of the question that began it all. Should we colonize Venus instead of Mars? After all we have seen, after walking in the spirit of the stoic pioneer and sailing with the graceful mind of the sailor, it feels as though an answer should be waiting for us here at the end. A final, simple choice, a verdict. But perhaps the most profound questions are not puzzles to be solved. Perhaps they are seeds. Imagine holding a small, plain, unassuming seed in the palm of your hand. You can ask, is the destiny of this seed to become a strong and rugged oak tree or a soft and graceful willow? The question seems to demand a single answer, but if you plant that seed, if you give it soil and water and time, you may find that it grows not into a single tree, but into a vast and wondrous garden, filled with 1,000 different flowers you never could have imagined. The purpose of the seed was not to provide an answer, but to create the garden. Our question tonight was that seed. The journey it has taken us on is that garden. It has bloomed not into a simple final choice, but into a quiet and expansive feeling of awe. In other words, the goal was never truly to choose a planet. The goal was to understand the choice. We set out on a voyage to map two distant worlds, and we discovered that the map we were drawing was, in the end, a map of ourselves. We saw our own capacity for stubborn, heroic endurance reflected in the red dust of Mars. We saw our own capacity for elegant, intelligent adaptation reflected in the golden skies of Venus. The question was never a test with a right or wrong answer. It was a mirror, and in it we were privileged to see the beautiful, complex, and endlessly hopeful spirit of humanity. What this really means is that the dream itself is the treasure, the gentle, persistent, and wondrous human desire to look up at the night sky and to imagine a home there. That is the destination. It is the quiet, luminous core of our curiosity that inspires us to tell these grand stories, to build these beautiful and intricate dreams, whether they are set on red soil or in a golden sky. The simple, profound act of wondering about our place in the universe is our truest foundation. It is the ground upon which we build every possible future. So let the question rest now. Let it dissolve into the peaceful darkness around you. There is no need for a decision. There is only the gentle, soothing feeling of having explored the possibilities. Let that feeling of calm and expansive wonder be a soft blanket for your mind as you drift into your own quiet dreams. The great silent cosmos will continue its slow and patient dance, and we can rest now, in the stillness, knowing that the human capacity for dreaming is a safe and wondrous harbor. Sleep well.